In order to facilitate testing, I've created a couple of templates. You can see them here side by side. I'm showing the command line and also within File Explorer, the same location in the file system. On the left-hand side, I have a template for creating tests for browsers. On the right-hand side, I have a template for creating tests for Node. As you can see within the File Explorer, I have pretty much the same structure. At the root, it's the template or the structure that we have discussed. We start off with a starter code folder, and if we move into it, we would see a number of files. Now, as you can see here, I have an exercise file. I have something called a runner, which runs that exercise, and then I have a solution. And within the test directory, I have a test.js file. This is pretty much the same thing we've talked about before. Now there's also a package.json that simply lists the dependencies for this test. Given that this is a template, the only thing that it has is Mocha and Chai. So if we look at the one for the browser, you'll see that you have pretty much the same structure, with the exception that the runner, instead of being a JS file, it's an HTML file. Other than that, the rest of it is the same. So let me go ahead and show you here what that looks like in code. And you can see here that the runner simply makes a reference or simply calls out to three functions, and these are just dummy placeholder functions that are within the exercise.js file. You can see here this calls the first function, this calls the second function, this calls the third function. Again, these are just dummy placeholder functions. If we go into it, you can see here the notes that would be for the student to create or to fill in with their code. For now, they're simply returning an error or an error string that says this function is not implemented. And this is repeated for all three of them. Now, if we look at the solution simply says or simply returns this is a success, simply to illustrate something that could be done. Now, within the testing file, I'm simply checking to see or I'm simply looking for the success messages. As you can see here right now, this is referring to the exercise file, the ones that the students would modify, so all of those tests fail. Now, when we look at the browser template, we have pretty much the same thing as the runner here within the node side. However, because this is a web page, this is simply making calls from buttons. As you can see here, I have three buttons: call first, call second, call third, and then I have corresponding functions that again are calling the functions within the exercise.js file. And you can see here all of that. Now, if I move into the exercise.js file, we will see the same structure. And the solution, again, is the same, and the test, that's the same thing. Now, because the exercise.js file has a little bit less code that would be used in Node, we need to use this file right here, which is something I had covered before, and it simply lets you load vanilla JavaScript without having to export those functions. So if you use this template, it will simply work. Now let me go ahead and show you one more thing. If we go back, let me get back to the directory structure here, you'll note that I don't have any node underscore modules, and that is because this is what you would get when you download the project. The next thing that you would need to do whenever you start on this template is to install those dependencies, and you do that by running npm install. So in this case, I would do starter code, moving into that directory, and then running npm install, and that would install the dependencies for that project. So if I go back to the file system, you see that I now have a nodes modules directory. Same thing here. If we move into starter code and then run npm install, the same thing would happen. Let me wait for that to finish and then move to the file system, and you can see here that we now have that file. After that, you could go ahead and run your tests. So in this case, I will do Mocha. Remember, all of those tests will fail. test.js, and we see there that all of them fail, and it's complaining because the strings don't match. So you can see here it's getting error and it's looking for success. And if we scroll up, you can see there the functions that are being called. In this case, we would do the same here. Let me go ahead and run the test, and you can see there that the same thing happens. So I'm going to go ahead and upload this code. You can download it and use it when you're starting a new test. And you have two templates there, one for starter code, one for the browser, and the other one for Node. Now, before I close, let me go ahead and show you the browser side, so you can simply see how that would be used within the browser, because this is something we haven't done before. You can see here the run.html. If I pull that in, you can see there that those calls are being made, and when I call them, they're all going to return errors. And this is simply to illustrate that the same thing that we do on Node at the command line, we can do through the browser, again calling into those functions that are within the exercise. So with that, I'll go ahead and close and say goodbye.